Thank you, Jay.
I'm tripping you. I'm so sorry. I'm stuffing salad in my face.
At the Westinghouse Laboratories in New York, an interesting experiment was conducted. A great bar of steel, 8 feet long and weighing a half ton, was suspended vertically from a chain. Parallel to it on a stout thread hung a cord from an ordinary bottle, weighing perhaps a half ounce. Again and again, the small cork was swung against the huge steel bar. For a long time, the bar hung motionless, but after 10 minutes, a nervous chill seemed to go through the bar. Another 2 minutes, and the chill turned into plainly visible vibrations. Those vibrations increased in rapidity and in strength until after 25 minutes, the great bar began to swing like the pendulum of a grandfather clock. Rotarians, you and your club projects may seem at times like the cork tapping against the bar. Tap you must, and if you tap long enough, the bar will swing.
So I do have a graphic. I like this. And those of you that live with cats would like this. I wonder if this will bounce. Maybe that one will. And did you put the second one in? Oh, good. We've had a lot of trouble keeping an ambassador to Ukraine lately. We need a big man to be ambassador to Ukraine. And here I discover a trainee off in Nepal. So I thought, while he was gone, we would just nominate him.
All in favor?
Aye. All right.
Seems like it was done.
Okay.
Jay and fellow Rotarians and guests. Today, thanks to the technological wizardry of Alan Frank, we have an inspirational video to share with you from the Rotary Foundation. This is about a 2-minute long video. It's titled Because of You. So thanks to everyone at our club for your contributions to the Rotary Foundation. Now I'd like to invite 5 inspirational members of our club to come up and receive Paul Harris Fellow Awards. So Carol Howell, Dr. Ron Koopman, Dr. Brian Mayo. Is Ted Michaels here today? I was looking around, I didn't see Ted, so we'll catch him at another noon meeting. And past President Bill Nebo. And President Jay, why don't you come up and be part of the photo shoot here? All right. And I'll also present each of our recipients here. Ron, congratulations.
Thank you, Pat.
Carol, thank you. Dr. Brian Mayo, thank you. Yes, President Vivo, thank you very much.
We all get there. Yeah.
All right. We got it right this week. Hey, great. Duly done. Great. Great, let's see.
Student of the month.
Carolyn Siegfried, you're next for Student of the Month. I was tooling my way down this list. I'm not used to it without markings on it.
Hello, fellow Rotarians. As you know, it's our pleasure to be able to recognize outstanding students from our local high schools. And so now I'd like to invite Dan Musselman, who's the vice principal at Del Val High School, to introduce this month's outstanding student.
Good afternoon. So I'm here today because I have the honor and pleasure to introduce Del Val's Student of the Month, Skylar Montiel. Skylar's been with us at Del Val since the beginning of the school year, and since August she's completed 8 courses with a GPA of 3.85, and she has perfect attendance. More importantly though, Skylar is an exemplary person. So Skylar attended school in Arizona, and it was interesting. I was going through trying to find some things to say about her. And her 2nd grade teacher noted that Skylar's a very smart girl who could achieve whatever she puts her mind to. She's a fantastic leader, friend to everyone, works hard, and the teacher was delighted to have the opportunity to meet and get to know Skylar. And she's been that way ever since, is my guess, because that's the exact same things that our teachers say about Skylar now. So one teacher said Skylar's amazing in class, she's a model student. Another stated she demonstrates exceptional citizenship. And another pointed that she's always willing to help. And our art teacher said she's an excellent artist. Skylar plans to transfer back to Granada at the end of this year, graduate from Granada, and then attend Las Positas, where she wants to pursue her passion for ceramics and art. So, Skylar, come on down.
Skylar's is choosing not to say anything, which is absolutely acceptable. A photo first? All right, all right, here. Let's do this, all 3 of us. So we have a plaque to present to you, Skylar, so let me have you hold the plaque.
There you go. Good picture. Thanks.
All right, and then Skylar, we also have for you just some gift certificates, which are gifts from our local businesses to recognize your outstanding contributions, and congratulations on kind of racing through your classes at Del Val and for your very outstanding GPA.
Thank you, Carolyn. Congratulations, Scholar. Mary Ann Rosa, would you come up and say a word about mini grants for us? To us, at us.
December.
Yeah, cool.
Very cool. Very
Okay, well, we're mean, aren't we, Ellen?
Yeah.
I think I need a new picture. That was 1995. Anyway, the mini grants are due again, March 3rd, which is the first December 3rd, the first Wednesday in December. So if you are a contact for one of the schools, please contact your school and remind them when the mini grants have to be in. We already have about 8. So we'd like to have a few more. So, and I know there's some teachers out there, community groups that would like to have our support. So please remember, Wednesday, first Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ann.
It gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Lara Webber, who is the music director and conductor of the Livermore Amador Symphony. She is, believe it or not, entering her 6th year in this post. And what is particularly special is that she has solved a very major difference in leading a community orchestra when throughout her career she has led professional orchestras. There is a big difference. Laura came to us from the Baltimore Symphony of all places, and several other very well-respected orchestras before that. But conducting a community orchestra is a totally different challenge. And she has risen to that in a magnificent fashion. In fact, the performances of the Livermore Symphony are as much fun for me as some of the professional orchestras that I've played with. So with that, Lara.
Oh, of course.
Move slightly.
Here, let me change my.
There we go.
Holder. There we go. But I'll keep the remote.
Okay.
Wow, that makes me get all, I don't know, teary, misty-eyed, flush. Honestly, what a lovely thing for you to say, Alan, and what an honor for me to be here again with you after a few years. It's, I think, been about 3 years since I was with you here, and to be again reminded of what an honor it is to be in this room with you, in this community together. The work that you do individually, collectively, on a local, on a regional, on a national and international level as Rotarians is an example that we need to model in so many other parts of our communities writ large. I wish I could bring my kids here. This is work that needs rebuilding and renewing, especially now. And I have to thank you, those of you who just stood up and gave your donations to the music scholarship. I'm especially grateful that you think of that and recognize its importance. That's something I actually asked for some figures, facts and figures on before I stepped up here today. Over the last 3 years, it's been about that long since I stood before you, Rotary has given $20,000 in music scholarships in Livermore.
Wow.
Yes, yay! And some of these scholarship recipients have gone on to study music in conservatory or at a high collegiate level and will probably go on to professional careers in music. But that's not really the point. The point is that you recognize that musicality is something that is human and is something that is part of all of us, whether we actually practice it, on a stage in an orchestra or not. It's part of our humanity, it's part of our basic form of communication as the animals we are. And it must be fostered and nurtured, and what you do with these dollars is you give permission. Go ahead. Don't let there be a barrier between you and expressing who you are, however that comes out. So I had actually thought this was my 5th season. Isn't that funny? It's going so fast. It is my 6th season, as I now am corrected. As music director of the orchestra, I can't believe it's already been 6 years, but it is in fact the 57th season for the Livermore Amador Symphony. And this orchestra, to have had a sustained support from many of the people in this room who are on the board in the orchestra and on the guild, the supportive arm of the orchestra, for so many decades is really unusual and extraordinary. And although I realize that we have done good work together since my arrival here, the orchestra was here and will always be here with this kind of sustained support. And I am only able to succeed on the foundation that was built before me and led before me. So I love what we're doing together, but I'm so grateful for everything that was done before that allowed this to happen and continue. So who are these people on stage? You know a few of them, I'm sure. A few of you are here, but these folks are your neighbors. They're your colleagues. They're your lawyer, your accountant, your music teacher, your web designer, your author. We have PT down here, and OT over here. You may run physical therapy, occupational therapy, in case you were wondering. These are who you see before you. These are the full-time professions. We've got a high school student or two in here, and retirees. We run the gamut on stage in this picture here. But what I like to say about who these people are is they're really superheroes, because that's just the identity you see during the day. But by night, they reveal their superpower, which is really that they are musicians. And of course, what we do when we collaborate on stage is we bring great symphonic works to life before your very eyes. You'll hear us play a 4-concert season at the Bankhead. Our first performance is coming up in December. We'll perform works for you by Brahms and Sibelius and Beethoven, lots of Beethoven next year. He's turning 250. You'll hear works of great American composers, Copland, Bernstein, Samuel Barber, and living American composers and composers from all over the world, Jennifer Higdon. I hope to bring you music soon of a composer in Boston, Elena Ruhr, and eventually I'm talking right now with Gabriela Lena Frank, who's based in California, about what we might play of hers in the hopefully not too distant future. So it's a living art that we're bringing the greats from the past and the future greats of now to the stage. But what we really are, more than just playing the notes all together at the same time in the right way, what we really are storytellers. We're trying to convey through this vehicle of music emotion, expression, to ignite your imagination and our own through this collaborative experience. And we try to carry this important storytelling journey out into the community in other ways beyond the stage at the Bankhead Theater. So in the last 3 years, with a lot of support from people in this room, the Education Fund at LVPAC, the great work, my partner in crime over here, Beth Wilson, who helps us reach out and organize these concerts. We have reached over 3 years nearly, it's a little under 5,200 kids in 12 schools across Livermore and Pleasanton, and last year we came to Dublin for the first time. And pictured with me here is Alexander Miles, who is one of the winners of our Young Artists competition, which we do every year to bring out the talent in our own area. And he came, and these kids, to see him at 15 years old playing the way he does, right in front of them in their school, in the middle of their school day. Talk about a captive audience. Yes, we've got them, and their teachers. We bring in a program designed hopefully without it feeling like you are being educated, but rather you are just being entertained and drawn in. But it's immersed in their curriculum, in what they're learning day to day in the classroom. Music is math, it's fractions, it's ratio and proportion and symmetry and balance or imbalance. It is language. The ebb and flow of conversation is mimicked in music and song. Punctuation marks are in some ways the same as dynamic indications in a musical score. And as you can see, the kids just get super involved. And it begins in a participatory way with the singing of the national anthem with the orchestra playing with the kids. So it's been some of the most important work we've done. And in my previous iteration, as Alan mentioned, I used to work for big orchestras with giant budgets for education and big halls for 2,500 kids that'd be bussed in. In a way, I feel like this is even more important because we're going to them. And to see an orchestra come into your school is a thing to behold. About 30 of us go, and the vast majority of the folks playing are taking time off unpaid from work to give of their time. In fact, of the 75 or so musicians in our orchestra, only 2 of us are paid. Everyone is donating their time, their personal private practice preparation, wow, how many P words, their time in rehearsal, and many of them their time doing things like this, and reaching out and supporting the orchestra itself. We also have a summer youth orchestra, another thing that this small cadre of leaders of the orchestra pull off, where young musicians gather every summer and rehearse and produce a concert. The only experience quite like that happens all in one summer in the Tri-Valley. We have open dress rehearsals. We partner with the school district to make this happen. We're so grateful to Regina Brinker, who's the STEM coordinator at LVJUSD, who helps us reach out to these kids. Again, Beth is another key component in making sure we get these kids in the door. And here, this was one of my favorite moments from one of these events where these 3 young ladies came up with me on the podium and, faced the orchestra and actually made eye contact with the musicians, and we laid the score out, and I was able to explain, kind of demystify the process. We meet them at the beginning in the lobby. I talk with them about the composers. Some of the musicians come and demonstrate on their instruments to make these connections. And we've had letters come back to us and comments come back to us that kids have actually launched into their interest in music from this experience. It's a gateway opportunity it's so rewarding to know that it works, that it makes that connection. And we're about to give what must be our 4th or 5th free family concert. I must give credit where credit is due. This idea was launched when Scott Kennison walked up to me in the lobby and went, "You know what you should do? You have a large and devoted audience. You can afford to give a free concert on the same day that you're giving another concert, and you'll probably still get your audience." And this has blossomed and grown with the support of LVPAC and the collaboration with at first Cantabella and more recently Valley Dance Theater into this about an hour-long program, free to the public. We do holiday flavored music, feature obviously the Nutcracker dances, and then afterwards, right away in the lobby, as this wonderful cacophony begins called the Instrument Petting Zoo. Here's Sue Ivy from our first violin section, and Joni Lenigan from the cello section helping these 2 young people. And you hear these kids, they get, this is Tom over here. It's modeled after the part of the actual zoo where you get to go feed the animals. Well, in this case, you're feeding the instruments. And with lots of bleach wipe and, we've also had parents return to this event and they come and grab me and say, "My kid is studying a violin because of this, because they were bitten by the bug in this moment." And that's not even necessarily what we expect to happen. If 2 or 3 people decide to take piano lessons or something because they had this experience, great. But if all that happened was they had that moment of contact and realized that that individual opportunity to try something new in front of everyone, great. So we're really looking forward to that. And then many of you, I know, our guest conductor is here from Pops. Every year we give our annual Pops concert at the Robert Livermore Community Center. And I will confess to you, I was very concerned about how to succeed giving a concert like this, because I really never heard of anything like it with any other orchestra. But in many ways, it is my very favorite thing that we do every year, because it feels like a family reunion with orchestra, or like, you know, backyard barbecue with orchestra. And it is populated by some people who haven't seen each other for years and really only gather at this event, or folks that are introducing themselves to our community by coming to this event. As you can see, it's very silly. There's a theme, we dress up, we sing along. When does that happen in an orchestra concert? And what is particularly inspiring is that it's so well attended by so many of our arts organizations, like the LVO and our Tri-Valley Rep and the Bankhead staff, and, you know, Del Val Fine Arts is there, and it's a chance for all of us to really soak in that moment where we understand that we are connected in this community through the arts, that we've built our own arts, and the arts have built us up, and we must continue to do that. And of course, it's all very silly, which is so important. And more recently, we've had this wonderful opportunity to be the backup band, so to speak, for the major artist that appears on the Bankhead stage for their big, most important fundraiser of the year, the Brilliance at the Bankhead Gala. This year we got to work with Matthew Morrison, one of the most genuine and talented, great guys I've come across in a long time, and he invited the Livermore High School Chamber Choir to join him on this program, which was just tremendous. What a great statement for our community to. We've also performed our first go at this was with Judy Collins. Wow, what a thrill. And the Indigo Girls came the year after her. B.J. Thomas, somehow I don't have a picture of him, but my favorite moment with him was when he suddenly decided to start taking requests.
Oh!
And we don't really do that. I don't think he performs with the orchestra very often, and I was like, okay, he's just off track, and he's gonna realize we've got to do the next song in the lineup, and then he was actually taking requests. And I looked over at his band leader, who was like, so this is an illustration of how phenomenal our arts community is. I turned around to the audience, and you know, the lights are always in your eyes, and I'm looking and looking and looking, and I found Katie Marcel, and I caught her eye and I stared at her. And she is an artist and a manager of actors, and she looked at me like, oh God, this is something important. And I went, Little Green Apples. I said, that was the next song. I mouthed the words, Little Green Apples. And she goes, Little Green Apples. And finally she goes, oh, and she taps everyone in front of her, Little Green Apples, Little Green Apples. And some person, some poor unsuspecting soul, turns and looks at B.J. Thomas and goes, Little Green Apples? And it was like, bing! Oh yeah, let's sing Little Green Apples. So you can't make this stuff up. You've got to come to these concerts. It is a high wire act, and it's so much fun. And then we do things around town that aren't really musical in nature at all. They're just a chance to get to know each other. The Guild has really reached out beyond the incredibly difficult work of putting on Pops and other events. They now embrace these great opportunities to get together, and Page Mill and other wineries allow a percentage of the proceeds of whatever we're drinking to support the orchestra. And as you can see, you know, it's just a fun way to get together and bring people together and introduce you to the family of the orchestra. So there's so many ways to connect, and we never want to take for granted that this is just assumed. Right now, the orchestra is big and committed, and we have a really strong audience following. But the city is growing and changing, and I'm witnessing these changes happening so rapidly. I want to make sure that we're never that we do not diminuendo in our message, that we're here. So I want to encourage you to remind people that we are. that we're here if you're a musician and you want a place to play. All you got to do is keep up with us. There's a place for you. You can, if you are not, picking up your violin and dusting it off, you can help us produce these events around town. You can attend. You can express yourself however you might with us in this way, and reach out, if not through the symphony, through another of our arts institutions in town. So this is the real meat and potatoes of what we do. We rehearse every Tuesday night for 2.5 hours at East Avenue Middle School. Thank God for East Avenue Middle School. And it's a mysterious process, what we do in a rehearsal with these works of art, with these, works of art is kind of a good metaphor. As I, so brilliantly typed here, it is a creative and collaborative process. And it requires such focus that whatever else might be going on in your world, it's really pushed out. I'm sure all of you have something in your life that when you focus, it's so important to be able to be so focused on something that the other things drop away. But in this case, it is collaborative, so it's a unifying experience to rehearse and prepare orchestral music together. One analogy might be, imagine if instead of going to a museum and looking at a Picasso or an O'Keeffe or a Kandinsky, if instead you, the art aficionado, was given a roadmap of how to create that painting with very, very specific details. These are the colors you need to use. This is the kind of stroke you should have. And these are the major features of the painting and the part of the frame they should be in. And now you have 2.5 hours, all 75 of you, to recreate it. And then you recreate it again next week. And you recreate it again the week after that. And each time, maybe you've refined the way you apply the paint or whatever material you're using. In a way, that's what composers do. They give us a roadmap. They give us a very detailed, in a certain particular language, set of instructions that we decode together and recreate in that moment. And it's, yes, I lead that process, but it is totally collaborative. I was just talking with the members of the orchestra after our rehearsal last night. The orchestra has just started to reach that level where they really are handling the piece really well, and I am finding that tempo that works for everyone, and it's because of what they're contributing and how they're playing. It's not just, okay, I've learned the piece and now I'm going to impose my will on you. That is not how this process should work. It is sometimes how it works. But that's why conductors have a poor reputation sometimes. What we're doing, and these moments are ephemeral, right? The minute they happen, they're gone. It's music. So that imparts a tremendous responsibility on us as performers and musicians, even as volunteers. Because if you're in the museum and you don't like the painting you're looking at, you can just move on. It's normal. Go to the next gallery, whatever. If you're in the hall, you may not like what we're playing or how we're playing it, but it's a big deal to get up and walk out, right? You're going to interfere with people's space. It's a statement somehow, or, and so as my colleague Toni Arnold, who's also a conductor and a singer, said, she recently did a master class, and I heard her say that performers are curators of time. It is our responsibility. We're architects, really, of time, and we're curating the time we spend together in the concert hall. And while we all might feel differently about what we're hearing at given points in time, and we may react differently and talk differently about how we felt about it, we are having that experience together. We are a captive audience. and therefore it is also very unifying for the audience, for the listener. And it is a collaborative process for you. You're active in this role in the audience. So what we're working on in these captured moments are the details, any of us hearing a piece of music for the first time might miss some of these details. But kind of like walking into a gorgeous piece of architecture, a cathedral with, pillars and art and stained glass, you may not see exactly how that structure is upheld. But if those details weren't worked out really well, the structure would fall and you wouldn't be able to enter it. So that's what we do every Tuesday night. And you have to imagine, we bring 75 different people. We've each had a different kind of day. Some of us are more tired than others. Some of us are struggling with a health crisis or we've just had an enormous triumph. We're grappling with different issues in different ways, and we're all coming at the same project together with each of us with our unique perspective, but we have to unify it. And there is no hierarchy in music. Anyone can have the melody. Anyone can be the most important voice at any given time. And it's not just my job to recognize that. It's the orchestra's job. So there are moments in the pieces we're preparing where the second violins and the violas are the most important thing going on, even though it might not be the melody. And if everyone does not know and respect the fact that we must listen to that, we're lost. The pieces have to be respected and heard, all of them, to work together. So it's a very interesting leadership lesson as well. We all have to take that moment of leadership, and we all have to occasionally step back and allow it to happen. So, and all of this builds community. And we have a heck of a lot of fun. A little too much fun sometimes. There are things I say out loud in that room that I really hope the tape is not rolling. But you're invited anytime. If you ever want to just see what it's like to be in an orchestra, come sit in the room. We'll put you right in the middle somewhere and listen and be a part of it. And remember, it is ephemeral, which is great for mistakes. You can just leave them by the side of the road. And coming up next is music that this is a very apt quote, especially after last night's rehearsal. We literally did play one note at a time for a good 5 minutes to really, really tune them. So Sasson is right, that we must practice slowly. And we're featuring one of his most famous works on our first concert of the year, The Carnival of the Animals, which is not a kid's piece, not at all. It is a very sophisticated work of art. They're little musical masterpieces that are so transparent and beautiful and funny. Yes, you hear the hee-haw of the donkeys and the roar of the lion, but it is also transcendental music when you're with the fish in the aquarium. And although he was sadly kind of embarrassed that he was so involved in this whimsical piece while he was trying to be a serious composer, he wouldn't let anyone publish it, except for one movement, the Swan, which is the most famous melody he ever wrote. It's written for solo cello and pianos, but here it's played, I thought you guys, especially you folks from the lab, would especially like this. It is here played on a theremin by Clara Rockwell. I shouldn't have told you what it was. I should have had you guess. Oh, and then we turn to music of Tchaikovsky. This is on our opening program, December 7th. And here we're really telling several stories. The story of Tchaikovsky's first symphony. He was 26. He had been identified as the next big Russian composer in waiting. His teachers were all of the Russian nationalist school and had worked so hard to establish their own sound, distinct and apart from Western European architectural music. But Tchaikovsky wanted to go there too. And he managed, through his heart, to bring both of those worlds together. It was a mighty struggle for him. He wrote to his brother about how it nearly killed him to write this symphony. He didn't sleep, he didn't eat, and he was berated by his teachers that it wasn't good enough constantly, but he insisted on his own voice, on expressing his own heart. And you can't hear that struggle really. It flows so seemingly easily in the symphony, but he fought with himself over that piece. So what we're doing now is trying to tell his story by introducing the characters, so to speak, of the music, his great melodies. The opening movement begins with a very long, lyrical, very Russian-sounding melody, flute and bassoon over little murmurs in the strings, and then you'll hear in the flutes a pesky little counter theme that's maybe some of Tchaikovsky's anxiety poking through. So listen for these two characters that we'll try to introduce you to on December 7th. Your pesky voice. And those two ideas form the whole first movement and kind of fight with each other a little bit. It's beautiful music. Of course, no Tchaikovsky symphony. Talk about wearing your heart on your sleeve. The second movement is full of heart. It's nostalgic and expressive and beautiful. There's an endless melody in it that reaches its peak in the French horn section. And I'll just share that wonderful moment with you. And then the whole horn section goes, wow, that's exhausting. And one of my favorite moments in the symphony is, of course, a waltz. You can't have a Tchaikovsky symphony without a glorious waltz theme in the last, third movement. And I'll leave the finale to your ears in the hall, but it's full of cymbals and bass drum and ever-increasing speed, as is so typical of Tchaikovsky. And hopefully if we play our cards right in building that architecture, we will lift the roof off just a little bit. So thanks for listening as we go on, and thank you for your support. Oh, I have to work. What am I doing?
Draw a card, mini card.
Oh wait, I forgot. Join us. Okay, never mind. All right, it says the whole number. I have to actually.
Just the last Three numbers.
459.
Somebody?
459.
455.
459.
Oh!
And now, you have to make the hard lifestyle choice.
Oh,
Between something
man.
healthy or something not, there you go.
I didn't take it.
All right.